Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another discussion video. In today's video, we're talking about my thoughts on the Set 11 ban list. We're about a month and a few days away from the release of Set 11, so probably like next week, maybe the next few weeks, we're going to get an announcement for the Set 11 ban list. It seems like they like to drop it a few weeks early to get the players all prepped. And I was going to do this video no matter what, but it's pretty cool that a lot of people did ask for this video in particular, so kind of like some service for you guys, the subscribers. So before we get into it, guys, if you are new here, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell so you don't miss a video. If you want to help the channel out, there are tons of ways to do that down in the description below. You have the Gemmy app and the Patreon if you want one-on-one coaching with yours truly, as well as your cross-world competitive content. You guys have the Dex Protection link down there if you guys need sleeves, deck boxes, binders, all that card storage stuff. Their stuff is honestly unbeatable. And finally, guys, if you want to buy or pre-order the cards you see in today's video, make sure to use my link in the description to TCG Player. That being said, let's get started. So the first card on everyone's mind whenever you talk about a Set 11 ban list, it's Bibbidi Super Combo. This card is, you know, in my opinion, the most likely in this conversation to receive some sort of alteration, whether it's a ban or a limit or otherwise. Now, here's the thing. The reason why this card is so overtuned, I know I'm speaking to the choir here, but it circumvents the combo mechanic. And we saw this problem with like Mira Champa Battering Laser, or even more recently, Mira Champa Swift Retaliation Cooler, right? It's these things that really make the combo step invalid. And the problem with Bibbidi is it is a little bit smaller in terms of combo power when you compare it to like a Mira, but it turns almost any card on your board into a mini Mira. And honestly, that power difference there, it doesn't matter. You're still oftentimes not out comboing the Bibbidi. Yes, there are answer cards to it, but it's honestly not a great sign when you see players like Brian Samuel feel like they have to main deck Ultimate Judgment Jocko just to answer Bibbidi. I mean, that kind of tells us the format is pretty skewed towards this card. I mean, Vegex has kind of proven that it's the most dominant deck in the format. Now, keep in mind, we don't have a true format, right? We don't have our premier events, we don't have our regionals, but I've been covering a lot of the smaller events on the channel, and even going to the All-Star Showdown, so many of the top names in the game were at this tournament, and 3 Vegex made that top 8. Vegex went on to win in a Vegex Mirror Match Finals, right? So I think that does say a lot. Now, what do I think is going to happen to Bibbidi? Well, I think it's mostly going to hit the ban hammer. I do think they're going to just put Bibbidi to 0 and outright just say this card's too powerful. Other options for the card, I don't think that a Boo errata would be a bad idea, like a Boo only leader errata. I think that would be fine. Boo is not really doing a whole lot right now, and this card obviously was meant to be played with Boo. It was released in that same set, and Boo always is going to have a low hand size, so maybe Bibbidi's a little bit more fair in that deck, but still, I think when you're comparing the errata to the straight up ban, I think the ban is overall more healthy for the game. I mean, even Boo is gonna be able to play the new Paragus Black Super Combo, right? So that's a pretty positive thing it has going for it. Now, if I were to give my recommendation for Bibbidi, I'm gonna defer back to a video I did for the Set 10 ban list where I talked about Android 21 Violent Predator. That was the card on everyone's plate, you know, for as far as the chopping block went, right? So what I offered as a solution for Android 21 was to limit it to 1 copy per deck and put the ultimate tag on it. I really do think that would have been a solid fix for Android 21, and I think that would be a pretty good fix for Bibbidi Primeval Conjurer. Let me explain why. So if any card in this game is, you know, strong enough to warrant being put to 1 copy per deck, think about something like Cold Bloodlust, for example, I think it's pretty reasonable to say that that card should have the ultimate tag on it, because the whole design on SCRs, right, is, for the most part, not every single one is on this power level, but most of them are supposed to be so powerful you're only allowed to play 1 copy per deck, and then when you draw into it, you know, it's going to most likely turn the tide of the game in your favor when you play it, right? And I guess Cold Bloodlust was deemed to be one of those cards, and I really think that Android 21 Violent Predator could have also been one of those cards. And, you know, I don't blame them for banning the card in any means. I mean, because against certain matchups, Android 21 is going to be an auto win, and that's not fun for anybody. So in the case of Android 21, I do think that's fine. But if Bibbidi was to be errated to have ultimate on it, it would obviously be limited to 1 per deck, and that would create a very interesting play dynamic for the game, especially black mill decks. So here's what would happen. If your opponent activated a mill effect and they sent Bibbidi to the drop area, you would know that they cannot possibly have any other Bibbidis in their hand. You know that their 1 ultimate Bibbidi is in the drop area, but they have ways to buy it back. For example, Fu Mission Accomplished, you have Vegex Space Time Synthesis, you have ways to recycle it. So in that sense, to me, it feels like a really cool and skill intensive one of, if that makes sense. I know a lot of players are going to comment down below and say, well, one ofs are luck sacky, one ofs are the opposite of skill intensive, and I do see that point. I definitely do, but I think Bibbidi is just like the right place, right time kind of card where you could put it to one, slap ultimate on it, and I think it would actually be a pretty positive player experience because, you know, a good opponent could track the Bibbidi and know where it is at all times. I think that would actually be pretty cool. But besides that, I mean, I think they're probably going to outright ban it, but one more reason I think that the ultimate tag would be cool is because it would give players almost like a budget option for an SCR, right? Players, if Bandai was to take this design philosophy and slap ultimate on one ofs, players could actually, you know, play decks and play, you know, quote unquote secret rares or these ultimate cards that are not, you know, 50, 60 to 100, $200, right? I think that'd be a pretty cool player experience thing as well. But besides that, I think there's a good point to be made that Bibbidi is a temporary issue and Vegex's leader is possibly more of a problem because, you know, we're seeing a lot of black sand support come out in set 11, but the thing is, Vegex just almost does it better, right? Vegex mills more cards, and in these drop area centric decks, getting more cards into your drop area is always going to translate to more potential pluses, right? So I can honestly see a world where down the line Vegex itself as a leader is a problem. I mean, compared to every other leader in the game that mills, they all for the most part mill 3 cards, as where Vegex mills 5, and he has a lot of other pros as well, to the point where you can't tap out, to the point where during your awaken turn you can use the activate main on both sides of your leader. There's just a lot of really strong things for Vegex that the other leaders don't quite have. So I can see Vegex down the line being a problem. Will they ban it on the set 11 ban list? I doubt it, but that might be something we need to look at in the future. But what do I think will happen to Bibbidi? I think it'll get banned to 0. What do I hope happens to it? Limited to 1 or slap with the ultimate tag. But moving along, let's talk about Koitsukai. Now, this is a card that I really thought needed to have something addressed with it leading into set 11 because of the new blue baby deck. The new blue baby deck is pretty much solely comprised of counterplay. So you're really playing all your cards on your opponent's turn, and Koitsukai is playable in any deck in Dragon Ball Super, and this one card basically says you cannot play your blue baby deck, right? It feels really bad to, you know, be faced with this card when the whole premise of your deck is playing on your opponent's turn. But what I will say is Revenge Big Bang Attack was a card spoiled in the last few days that actually gives Baby some leeway when it comes to playing around Koitsukai. So what Revenge Big Bang Attack does is it's a counter attack. If your leader is a blue baby card, negate the attack, then switch up to 2 of your energy to active mode, and then draw 1 card. So that's really good for Baby, and it gives you an extra card to play during your opponent's turn when your opponent activates Koitsukai on you. So that does give you an out in a sense, right? I think that's a pretty good thing. However, I do kind of think Koitsukai is probably gonna need a errata to black only leader. It just seems like it's still gonna give Baby a really hard time. Like, they can play around it, but when you're looking at more of like the average player who'll be playing Baby, it is a really unfun player experience, and Bandai does have to worry about fun, but I do think it's also a pretty good move for the competitive experience as well. Now, do I think Koitsukai needs to be banned? I don't necessarily think so. I think an errata to black only leader could suffice, because the problem with black, especially black mid-range, is that black doesn't have any good meaningful counterplays, and they don't really have a ton of great negates like a lot of other colors do, like Topo or Nimbus or Kakunsa, things like that. So making this black only would give black some way to play mid-range where you can like stop Topos and you can stop Kakunsas and things of that nature. I think that'd be pretty cool. So I hope it gets errata to black leader only. I can see it being banned, although Revenge Big Bang Attack could potentially be a way where Baby can play around this card and not, you know, need to get Koitsukai banned. So we'll see what happens with that. Next up, I want to talk about Boonie. Boonie's another card that people do talk about a lot for a ban, and I just don't see it. The card is obviously incredibly powerful. No one is questioning that. No one's saying the card is not good, but there are actually a lot of answers to a Boonie. Like, one thing that I feel like a lot of people don't realize is when you play a Boonie, yes, it has deflect, but when they activate the auto to play the tokens, you can respond to that, and there are actually quite a few cards that interact with that. Think about like Denial of Hope, for example, you know, a card that people don't play, but in actuality is probably quite good in the format. You can stop up Boonie tokens with that. You can stop up Boonie tokens with Trunks God-Stealing Technique. So there are ways to interact with the tokens. You can even, you know, Crusher Ball or use SS4 Vegeta Primal Transformation to just rest all the tokens, right? And that's going to be quite good. So there are ways to interact with it. It is an incredibly strong card, but you know, honestly, blue doesn't have too much else going for it if you don't have a Boonie to play in the mid game. So I don't really see a problem with this card. I don't see it getting banned or errated. The one thing I would like to see errated, and this actually wouldn't even be an errata, this would be a rule change. I want it to be where when you look at the top card of your opponent's deck, it stays there, because I really feel like the Universe 10 archetype was meant to do that. But I don't know, whatever it might be a translation issue or something along those lines, where the rule book says, you know, if you, I guess something along the lines of messing with your opponent's deck or your own deck, you have to shuffle afterwards, because Ginyu does the same thing, even though it's a little bit weird. So with that being the case, I would hope that would happen with the rule book or errata, whatever has to happen there, but I don't see much happening with it. Cell Xeno, here is something that I can see compromise on. I don't think this card will be banned in any capacity. I don't think it should be banned in any capacity, because to be honest, when you go out and ban a $250 card, you're going to get a lot of uproar from the community, and I don't think that's a good thing for anybody. So what I think this card should see is an errata. I do think the successor should have some type of cost, because the problem with this card is we're not really seeing yellow green played in any capacity, but what we are seeing is this card's being played in mono green decks and mono yellow decks, which may have been unintended by Bandai. Maybe they, you know, did want that to happen. Maybe they did intend for that. But regardless, this thing should have a minimum of 1 yellow and 1 green cost. I think honestly, if you put that on this card, it becomes infinitely more fair. Like you know, your opponent sometimes will just be able to tap out for a 6-drop or a 3-drop, whatever math they're missing to play their Cell Xeno. And then they can play this for free, right? So they don't have to worry about any excess energy. But just slapping a green and a yellow keeps the card in a very similar power level. It makes it much more fair, in my opinion. And I could honestly see this thing being like 2 green 2 yellow cost, right? I could see that definitely being a thing, but I think at the minimum this should have a 1 green 1 yellow cost, and that'll make the other SCRs for the other colors more playable, right? Like people will actually play the Sin Shadow SCR, people will actually play the Primal Carnage Bardock SCR in green and yellow decks, right? So I think that could be a pretty good thing there. And one more thing I want to address, guys, people are constantly talking about hand control and how oppressive it is, how broken it is, but I do want to point your guys' attention to the several tournament recaps I've been doing over the past few weeks. Green and hand control are just not in the top cuts. They're not being represented. I think in the past 3 tournaments I covered, there was one green deck, a green Frieza deck, that, you know, made it into the top 8 out of 3 tournaments I covered in the past few weeks. That's just not great representation. I think green is in a good spot right now. I do think it's playable. I do think it's strong, but I don't think it's very oppressive. So I don't really think anything needs to happen to hand control. I don't think Tau needs to come back. I don't think Rebrand needs to be hit in any way. I really don't see any reason why green needs to be hit. Maybe set 11 it'll be a lot stronger, and then maybe we can have that conversation then, but I don't think green needs like any preemptive hit. But guys, that's my opinions for the set 11 ban list going forward. I definitely want to know what you guys think in the comments below. Very interesting discussion to have, so definitely let me know. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.